All right, GameStop is such an interesting story. I know, isn't it exciting? And I'm curious to know, and of course we don't have time for callers now, but do any of y'all own any shares of GameStop? Did you buy a share or two? Roxanne, did you buy any?
No, I can't say I did.
Pat George? You're not a day trader, are you, Pat George? No. Well, yours truly bought a share of GameStop last week.
Okay.
I had to get in on the action. I don't worry about what it's worth. It's not about what it's worth. It's about being in the game. All right, Pat George?
Part of the conversation.
Part of the conversation, having some fun with it. I joined that Reddit, Wall Street Bets, and this is all about, basically, GameStop is, kind of a has-been business. It was like a Blockbuster, right? Blockbuster, remember, used to go rent video. Some people will remember renting videos from Blockbuster. It was a big business at one point, and now it's just gone, doesn't exist anymore. We stream videos now. Same thing with buying CDs. Now everybody just streams things down off of iTunes or other places. Well, GameStop is a retail video game where you'd actually go buy the video game. And most people are not buying video games anymore. They're getting apps on their phones and stuff, and that's how they're getting access to these video games. So that's also moved over to a streaming market. So as of last summer or so, GameStop was worth about $4 or $5 a share. It started to move up because some people on this Reddit board, Wall Street Bets, started to notice that there was an awful lot of short sellers on GameStop. Now, that means people who have borrowed, at least in theory, borrowed a share of GameStop from an actual investor and then sold that share with a plan to buy a share back at a later date. So the idea would be if the price falls, when you buy it back, you get the difference between the price you sold it at on an earlier date and the price you bought it back at on a later date. And you're supposed to actually borrow the share. Now, your brokerage does all this for you, so you don't have to worry about this. But what can happen is there could be what's called naked short selling, which isn't as much fun as it sounds like, Pat George. But naked short selling is when you sell a share, but you never borrowed it to begin with.
You didn't own the stock.
Well, you didn't borrow it because you never really owned it. You borrowed it, and then you sold it. But in this case, you just sold it. And so there's a share that doesn't actually exist that you've now sold. And this was a part of a big documentary, I don't know, about 10 years ago or so. I think it was called The Big Short. And they explained all of this, the concept of naked short selling and how these guys could come in and basically destroy a company. These high-end billionaires, these hedge funders, they could come in and destroy a company through naked short selling. Well, that's what was happening to GameStop in this case. And these Redditors noticed there were 130% of the GameStop shares had been shorted, which means there was more short sale shares than there were shares in existence. And so these guys said, well, wait a minute. What we could do is we could buy up all the shares in existence and just hold them, and we won't sell them back. And as we hold them, then as they're, they come responsible to redeliver their short share that they sold and now they've got to buy back, the price will rise because there's going to be a demand for these shares to fulfill the short contract. But there won't be any shares available because we'll have bought them all and be holding them. And so that's essentially what they did. They drove the price up as high as almost $500 last week. So if you happen to have one of these shares, particularly if you bought them at $5 or $10 or $15 or $20, as many of these Redditors did, some of these guys have made tens of millions of dollars. Now, only if they sell, which right now they're all saying they're not going to sell, which I'm thinking if you made $10 or $20 million on this, you might want to think about selling. Principal be darned, get your money. I'm Morgan Streetman, and that's the way I see it. Thank you for listening to the Morgan Streetman Show. We hope you enjoyed what you heard, and if you did, please click like and subscribe to help us out. And remember that we recommend that you exercise your brain at least once a week.